What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp, Fightful.com, here with a name you know, and boy, does he fit the crossover profile of MMA and pro wrestling. And look at that background. Look at that background. We got Dominic Garrini here. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Yourself, Sean?
I'm doing awesome. The background popped me immediately as you turned it on. You were like, can you see the back of my car? And I'm like, no, not at all. It looks great. So, MLW Filthy Island coming up February 17th. I mean, you and I are both big MMA fans. We know the inspiration of Fight Island. Please tell the people what maybe you expect out of Filthy Island.
Well, Filthy Island, it's an island off in Hawaii. There's no truth to the rumors that the locals are mad at us. From what Tom, Kevin, and I know, the locals are big fans. They've actually built a private airstrip for Dan Lambert and King Mo as he's getting ready to battle with Low Key again. To see who the true king of the knockout is in MLW. Overall, we're just looking for a really fun and exciting party. The ring will look pretty familiar to those of you that like the crossover pro wrestling MMA kind of deal, as we're going to be doing a no ropes ring for it. So no ropes on the ring at all for the Filthy Island show here on February 17th. And overall, just really excited that MLW was more than willing to let Tom make Filthy Island a reality after winning the Opera Cup this year.
Do you think that MLW missed the boat, quite literally, on not doing the moat around the ring as was originally pitched in the UFC?
I 100% believe that. Tom, Kevin, and I wanted alligators. We were told that we would need to obtain more sponsors than we had already obtained, which, we were not fans of, considering we had already worked our tail off to get the sponsors that we did. I mean, Tom won the Opera Cup. I mean, I've been rocking the Open Fight Challenge. So we weren't happy that Court wasn't ponying up the extra money for the alligator mode, but, here we are.
Well, I mean, it's funny you mention all the sponsors. An MLW.com article and press release 4 days ago says sponsors are pulling out left and right.
That is that is fake news. Not true. We are on the we got to the island. The island is phenomenal. The sponsors are going to be phenomenal. They're going to be very happy with everything that happens. No truth to these ACH attack rumors. No truth to this screw job against the Von Erichs, And let's look at something else on that. The screw job against the Von Erichs. Is that Tom's fault that he had a wrist cramp? If anything, we should be mad at Selena De La Renta for not providing proper catering for that show. Allowed Tom to get parched. His arm got a little tangled up, and it's a shame. The Von Erichs had a 400-plus day reign as tag champs. For it to end the Los Parks like that is sad, but they're tough guys. They're going to regroup.
So who's in charge of the catering this time? Are there going to be plenty of bananas around?
It's being Hawaii and all, we have spared no expense, and we have got a very large Spam selection, as it is one of the biggest delicacies on the island.
Nice. Whose call was that? Who put the hammer down and said, okay, we got to have ham?
Spam, that is an all
Spam. I thought you said ham.
Spam.
Oh,
no, it's Spam.
So
I don't know if you know this. Spam is like a delicacy in Hawaii.
I do know
that,
all
kinds of dishes with Spam. So that was our big coup. That's a pun there if you didn't know. That was our big coup for the island, was doing much Spam delicacies.
We actually had a Hawaiian fella who wrote for us, and he would constantly talk about Spam, for better or for worse. But the Filthy Island thing, I mean, I feel like, considering all these accusations of misrepresentation in the media about Filthy Island, do you think Tom Lawler will put out a Dana White-esque screw you to the media highlight video after all this?
Gosh, I mean, I can only hope. I don't know what the video production budget is, but I'm sure Tom will have something up his sleeve. I know I spoke with him recently, and a couple days ago, he was not happy about the negative publicity that this received. We truly believe this is going to be one of the probably finest episodes of MLW television in 2021, and probably over the last couple of years, really.
So MLW, Filthy Island. I mean, it's all going to be all over the place. Fubo Sports, YouTube, DAZN, beIN Sports, the Roku channel. MLW makes it very, very easy to find their show. How have you found that those platforms even help you when you're going to watch the show? Like, I mean, do you have a preferred method over another?
It's all over the place. You know, Court's done such a really good job about kind of getting the MLW brand out there, not only here in America but also overseas. When I wrestled for WXW last year, the amount of people that had talked about seeing me wrestle for MLW at that point, I think I only had like 1 or 2 matches, was off the charts. And that's one of the things that Court does really well, is get international deals, as well as, like you said, he makes it so easy to see. You know, the deal with Roku, the deal with Fubo, the deal with YouTube. There's just so many ways to watch it. And I think that helps our exposure levels out, you know, tenfold. You know, as awesome as a terrestrial television deal would be, you know, something like a Paramount or something like that, in due time. But streaming really is the kind of the way of the future. And I've talked with Court about this. He truly believes that streaming is the most important thing right now, and television is probably the second most important thing.
So you are actually, as we speak, on your way to the AAW school, right?
Yes,
I met you there almost like a year ago today. We were there talking, and had I known you were there, I would have interviewed you then. And we were like, haha, it's okay. We'll get that interview done WrestleMania weekend. Well, that did not happen.
We were wrong.
On a show that was named after me at that. Like, there was supposed to be one there. But, like, things have changed, and the world has changed, obviously. You are an MLW regular now. How important was that to, like, maybe righting the ship for your 2020, and how did your 2020 take a hit, or did it, as a result of all this?
So it's a big thing. One of the great things that MLW did for me in 2020 was the taping schedule allowed it so that, you know, we were constantly kind of doing something. So I think my last match before the pandemic was, my last 2 matches were March 12th and the 14th before kind of everything shut down. The 12th, I wrestled in Mexico for MLW. Was, you know, Tom and I, we did the AAA series in Mexico, and like it was very like, how are we gonna pull this off? It's like the day I landed in San Diego to go to Mexico was the day the NBA shut down. So it was a lot of uncertainty, you know, at that point. So we did that. We kind of knew all of our upcoming stuff was going to get canceled. And from there, you know, one of the things that Court did really well to keep us kind of busy and to keep everything kind of flowing was the introduction of Pulp Fusion, where it was a really good chance for people to kind of dig into, you know, us as characters during that time where we were off. From the independent standpoint, you know, our schedules got completely ravaged when COVID hit. I mean, I had probably 6 or 7 matches planned WrestleMania weekend, all canceled. Flights that had been bought for me, all canceled. Had to worry about how to fix all of that up. You know, for about 2 months, it was just, you know, radio silence. No one really knew what was going to go on. You know, there was really nothing to do. And then probably around June-ish, late June, late July, was really kind of the point in time where some stuff started to come back. I remember Court and I, we would talk usually minimum once a week about like, hey, what's the MLW plan? We never really knew. So around June, July was a moment in time where I started to do some smaller indie dates. I did ICW based out of New York. I was doing Paradigm Pro Wrestling based out of the Jeffersonville, Indiana, Kentucky area. And that was where my schedule kind of started to pick back up. The schedules still aren't back yet, obviously, you know, so the spike in numbers around December-ish, which was something I kind of figured has kind of slowed the schedules back down a little bit. But I guess, you know, with all the announcements yesterday of, you know, multiple collective-like events running Mania weekend, we're kind of on the comeback. For me, 2020 could have been a lost year, but I kind of stayed, like, really steady during the pandemic. I made some different changes, like obviously my hair. I grew my hair out and I did that. I decided to wear boots, get all new gear that people hadn't really seen me in. I'd kind of always been the same guy since I had started wrestling in, you know, March of 2016. I'd always been no shoes, a pair of like just random MMA shorts. So I kind of decided to really, you know, invest in myself and invest in my character. Like I said, do the boots, do the kick pads, new custom gear, new hairstyle. The entrance mask behind me was an addition that I thought about. So just a lot of stuff like that. And I kind of came out of the pandemic more popular than I went into it, which was something I didn't necessarily expect. So I'm really excited to see that. Obviously, Kevin and I had a really strong second half of the year, leading through the collective last year. So realistically, just really blessed to be in the position I'm in. Blessed to have the AIW school to train out a couple of times a week to keep myself fresh too.
Yeah, I was really impressed with everything I saw there at the AIW school. Just walking in, I mean, you got everything that you need there. It was like, if I were in that area, I would look at that and I'd be like, man, that's incredible. And it's something that I always talk about, whether it's Josh Prohibition, EC3, The Miz, Dolph Ziggler, like that area within 1 hour of Cleveland has a disproportionate amount of talent. And I'm always interested in what people from that area or that spend time in that area attribute that to. Is it iron sharpens iron? Because, I mean, you can look at it and say, oh, wow, that's a coincidence. It can't be a coincidence that much talent comes from there.
So some of it has to deal with the strong amateur wrestling roots in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah.
You look at a guy like Ray Rowe, wrestled at St. Ignatius High School. You look at a guy like Dolph Ziggler. He wrestled in school in the state of Ohio over the past, 50 to 100 years. But one of the real things that doesn't get the credit for why Northeast Ohio is as strong as it is that there's always been a pretty strong independent wrestling scene in the Cleveland area, going all the way back to JT Lightning, who started Cleveland All-Pro back in the early 90s. And after, JT kind of decided to step down from promoting and he got sick, John Thorne and AIW really took over the area. And it's been one thing that's really made the area so strong is, consistent names being brought into the Cleveland area, since the early 2000s, starting with JT and kind of, John kind of carrying on that tradition for the most part. I mean, on any given time when AIW is running, you're looking at some of the future stars, anywhere. Like, think about it this way. We did an AIW tryout last February in Akron, and out of that tryout, I think 3 guys got signed to AEW and 1 to the WWE just in the time since that tryout. So it's been an insane thing, and it's just always John's got a good eye for talent, and I think the addition of the school has been big to help talent out. The AIW school really started in 2015 when Johnny and Candice or Johnny first, and when Candice moved out with Johnny, Candice took over with Johnny. They did it together. When Johnny left, it was something that was not really foreseen at the time. So I kind of got thrust into a very, very quick role, and a lot of it was help from Johnny, or a lot of it was help from, John Thorne and Chandler Biggins, filling in a lot of my gaps. A lot of it was me just getting on the road as much as I could, doing seminars, learning from people. And, now I think we're in a really good spot when Josh Prohibition, as an assistant trainer myself, with now all my experience, now the TV experience, things like that, I really think we're churning out some of the better students in America. You look at guys like Trey Lamar, Josh Bishop, Wes Barkley, we're just scratching the surface, and, we're going up there 3+ days a week, to train the next generation.
It's funny you mentioned the amateur wrestling connection. I remember I was interviewing Gerald Harris, who is a former UFC fighter, famous for a lot of his slams. Yeah, and I was like, oh yeah, would you ever get into pro wrestling? He's like, I actually wrestled Dolph Ziggler a few times when he was going to Cleveland, when Gerald went to Cleveland State, and Dolph was at Penn or whatever. It's like, man, it's such a small world how all that works out.
Well, here's your small world. My college wrestling, or my high school wrestling coach, Coach Gerald Harris at Cleveland State.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that. I love that. I mean, people like Gerald Harris were the reason I got into MMA. I would see Rampage Jackson powerbomb somebody, and I'm like, oh, he's doing pro wrestling slams, and this Mirko Krokop guy has a finishing move? What are you talking about? He can just kick somebody and they fall over? Like, that's what dragged me in. So you mentioned your team with Kevin. Have you found that establishing yourself in a tag team has helped increase your profile? Because outside the auspices of WWE, that wasn't necessarily a thing as much until the last couple of years. Now MLW and AEW and a lot of other places have really hammered home tag team wrestling.
Yeah, so I remember Kevin and I had always kind of been friendly, and we became really good friends in 2018, right around April of 2018, we became like best friends. Like we had known each other from working stuff together. Kevin, was running stuff and he was bringing me in. And around, I'm going to say mid-April of 2018, I had been working with Evolve and I had been doing the catch point stuff on Evolve at that time. And I was looking for something new, essentially, because I kind of knew that was running its course. I kind of knew where that storyline was going to go in Evolve, and I kind of felt like I wasn't going to have a lot in Evolve after. Gabe Sapolsky always really enjoyed my work and was always a really supportive guy in terms of helping me out early in my career. But I kind of knew where we were going with the catch point storyline. It was going to end up just kind of fizzling out. I didn't know what to do. So that was in about April where I talked with Kev, and we had just kind of we'd been talking a lot. We noticed we had a lot of similar interests wrestling-wise, a lot of similar style stuff. So fast forward to about July, now the writing is fully on the wall of where the catch point storyline is going. Chase Williams is going to leave Evolve, who has kind of been like my mentor at that point. Stokely Hathaway is getting ready to leave Evolve just to go do some of his own stuff. So at this point, I've got nothing. So it comes down to this. I end up speaking with Kevin. I said, okay. I said, let's do this thing as a tag team. We did a couple of trial runs with some smaller promotions, and then of all places, Black Label Pro kind of was the first to really bite on letting us do our thing. And our thought process was, at least my thought process was, we were both pretty over as singles guys. For the most part, I had a pretty decent profile. My time in AIW as well as the time in Evolve, I was pretty high profile. Kevin was not as high profile as me, but was doing pretty well, doing stuff in Black Label and other things. But we kind of just looked at ourselves and said, we can accomplish more as a team than we can as individuals right now, and there's a real need for tag team wrestling. We really looked into what Josh Alexander and Ethan Page had said a few years prior when they had started Monster Mafia. Both those guys were a level above us, but both in similar spades of very over as singles guys and couldn't make it as singles guys, but knew that their money was going to be making it as a tag team. And kind of from there, it just all snowballed. Really, the moment that I kind of knew was going to work for us was we had a match with Drake and Henry at Black Label. And we did so well in that match, and we had talked with Drake and Henry, and we kind of knew that tag wrestling was going to be the thing. And from there, it's just kind of been our kind of crusade to really bring tag wrestling to the forefront of the indies. Because I think a lot of times people don't think of tag wrestling as important as it is. When you go to any normal show, especially an indie show, you're going to probably see 8 to 10 matches. 7 to 8 of those matches are going to be singles matches. So you really have so much canvas to work with as a tag team wrestler in terms of being different and giving something different. And now, we get to do that as well, for the MLW shows, and we're so excited about that.
The way I've always looked at it is almost everybody can relate to having a dream of wanting to win tag titles with their friend, their brother. Even their sister at this point, with women's wrestling emerging to the level it has. There are so everybody can relate to that, and it's an easy way to garner an emotion out of somebody, and you have more ingredients to work with. I think it's a way that people can show their personalities better because you have somebody else to play off of at all times as well. And I'm glad it's finding not just its foothold, but it's thriving. So we had mentioned MLW coming to you. I think you were announced as signing in late 2019. I think they said it was a 2-year deal, may have been a 3-year deal. When the pandemic hits right after that, how are you feeling 3 or 4 months later when you're like, all right, well, I got myself a deal at least during this period, and who knows how long this world situation is going to last?
Yeah, it's nice to have the guarantee for sure. One of the big things that is nice about MLW is that, Court Bauer reached out to me weekly during the pandemic just to not only see, how wrestling was, but how my personal life was. I carry a day job, while I wrestle, because as awesome as MLW is, we're not quite there to where it's something where I can support myself. I went through 6 years of college, so I have a lot of student loan debt to pay off.
Same.
But I have a day job, and during the pandemic, my day job shut down for almost 2 months, and Court would check in with me weekly just to see how I was doing, to see what I was doing, just to kind of just talk. And we would talk about all kinds of stuff, whether it be, just life, or, we would bring up like old wrestling stuff to talk about. But Court's always had a really big interest in me since, I signed. And that's one of the things that really sets Court apart, is I truly believe that Court cares about almost the entire roster, to the point of reaching out to us and talking to us and, getting our opinion on things. For an example, like one of the things was Court, when I first started, was very big into me wearing the gi. He thought it set me off as different, which is funny because it was something that Gabe and I had talked about originally. I did not like the idea of it in Evolve because it was just too bulky for me. So I agreed to start with it in MLW, and we kind of like had some ideas of where we would go with some storylines on it. And out of the pandemic, I wasn't a big fan of wearing the gi. As well, if I was going to team with Kevin, I really wanted to look the part of a tag team. So we pitched at the taping for me to go into the gear that I had gotten, and Court was very receptive to that, and that speaks volumes to him. He had a vision for me, and he was okay with letting me be comfortable in my skin and doing what I wanted to do.
I think there's
that. But
go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Sean.
No,
okay,
go ahead.
What I was going to say is, to have somebody that's still willing to work with me on that, that's one of the big things. Clearly, the signing cycle has been completely different than anybody could have ever imagined it being. The pandemic kind of really put the signing cycle into kind of hyperdrive. 2 years ago, you didn't know who Blake Christian or Alex Zane or some of these guys even were. And these guys now are, WWE guys.
Yeah.
And you would never said, who knew who Ben Carter was at the end of 2020, or at the end of 2019, besides Dylan Hales? Very few people did. And now he's, he was one of the hottest free agents this year, and him getting to NXT UK was one of the bigger storylines, post pandemic. So the signing cycle has been screwed, and you could be one of those guys that says, man, if I didn't sign, maybe I'd be signed, but you can't play that kind of game. MLW was willing to take a chance on me in September of 2019. And true story, one of the people that told me to sign with MLW in September of 2019 was BJ Whitmer, who works for AEW.
Yeah. I
had been very close with BJ since the start of my career through AIW, and I had reached out to him to kind of ask, to weigh my options. And he told me to go ahead and take the MLW deal, and see where my career lies in 3 years at the end of the MLW deal. So, I respect BJ's opinion, as he's been a guy who's kind of been around a little bit of everything, ROH, AEW now. He's kind of done it.
Very good guy, very smart guy about I've learned a lot just talking to BJ Whitmer.
Yeah, true. And BJ's always looked out for me. I remember when AEW was in town last February, they were in Cleveland last February right before the pandemic hit, he had gotten, some seats for Thorne, and they were second row, and Thorne had wanted to give me one, but BJ had said, no, you know what, I'd rather not put Dom in a bad situation of him getting seen on TV. So, it ended up being I got a whole different set of seats that I couldn't be seen. But, that was just a good guy looking out for me so I didn't get in trouble with my employer.
Yeah, I was at that show, actually.
But, yeah, that's why you were in town.
Yeah, I was doing the haircut gimmick.
You were in town to go to that show.
Yeah. I was doing the haircut gimmick.
Oh, I remember that now. That's great. But yeah, so MLW was willing to take the chance on me. They were willing to take the chance on Kevin right before the pandemic started. So that's where Kevin and I's minds are at. So right now, our goal isn't to say, well, we could have signed here. Our goal is to say, how are we going to make MLW, just as good as AEW? How can we make MLW just as good as WWE? How can we make people say, man, we're making the PWI top 50 tag list. Violence is Forever needs to be in the top 10 because they're, killing it in MLW.
So was it Court Bauer that reached out to you originally to make this MLW deal happen, or was it did somebody else do it? How did that work out?
So it was a little bit of me and MSL just kind of touching base. MSL and me had first met back in, I want to say, December of 2016. He was doing commentary for American Combat Wrestling in Newport Richey, Florida, and I wrestled in a mall food court for them. And he'd kind of seen and taken a liking to me then. And then just the MLW stuff happened. And MLW was always a periphery radar thing for me. obviously the original Team Filthy stuff caught my attention. I've been friends with Tom since he really kind of came to pro wrestling. I'm pretty good friend. I was pretty good friends with MJF at the time, and he really thought that I'd be a good fit for MLW back when they first restarted. There wasn't like a lot of like back and forth at first, mainly because of my Evolve deal, or when I was in Evolve, and then kind of after Evolve had kind of been done, and I kind of seen what they were doing, and I wasn't sure if I fit their vision. I had reached out to MLW, and then MSL was really my point man, kind of from day one on that, and he kind of referenced like, man, like, I've been watching you and all your Evolve stuff, and I've always thought about how good of a fit you would be, but I wasn't sure if there was a mutual interest there. So we kind of, talked, and then we did some negotiations, and it kind of all went from there.
I gotta say, my favorite part of your background is that it's sometimes cutting off your mullet. It's making you look like you have the undercut right now. Like, I don't know if you saw that thread of every WWE wrestler has the same haircut last week, but
yes.
It looks like you have that one now. So, like, you can compare hairstyles right now. But then when you turn...
I love it.
You turn, it's there. I love it. It's like... You're weighing, you got to be looking at Court Bauer like, look, Court Bauer, you better up that money in the future, because I can work the WWE style with this haircut. Don't tempt me.
I need to put that as a note on my phone for a contract renegotiation with MLW.
Oh my God. So Filthy Island, I want to know, what did you think when this idea was first brought up? Because when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's brilliant. I love it, because I just got out of full-time MMA coverage, and I couldn't be happier. Nothing will make you a casual MMA fan more than covering MMA full-time. But this was one of those things that got a lot of attention. People were curious about certain aspects of Fight Island and all this, and I thought this was, I don't want to say a no-brainer because it's a brilliant idea, but for the cast and crew that MLW has, it seems like such a slam dunk idea.
Yeah. So I will never forget being so upset that in those initial Fight Island like promos and teasers that like the UFC put out, the Octagon's out there on the beach, and you're like, okay,
yes,
this can be awesome. They're gonna fight on the beach, and you're like, this is gonna look so cool. And like, even I had talked, I think, with Devin about it. Like, him and I got in a Twitter thread about it, about how like it's gonna be cool, but it's gonna be terrible for the fighters. It's gonna be so hot out. And then I turn on the prelims, and they're in an arena, and I was like, wait, what? And it was like, holy shit, they sold such a fake bill of goods to sell these pay-per-views, and everybody bought it. And I was like, oh. So I think that Court and I had talked at that point, and we were kind of like, we don't want to sell a fake bill of goods. Like, this show needs to be outdoors, and it needs to actually have that authentic island feel. But like, if anything that you could say about the Fight Island UFC stuff, that's the problem with it. Like, everything that goes along with the Fight Island stuff in the UFC has been awesome. Like, all the like Conor McGregor coming to the octagon, and like Khabib coming to the arena. It looks so cool, and especially with like how everything's so sequestered right now with COVID. Like, seeing Conor roll up to the Etihad Arena in the fucking Rolls Royce was so cool. So it's like taking bits and pieces of that mixed with like the actual aesthetics of the island. And I think one thing that MLW does so well is that they have such a good graphics team, and they have a team that works so hard on making the show look beautiful. So I think that was definitely a slam dunk for that. And I know that Tom and I had talked about the Filthy Island idea along with Court, and we really liked the idea of it. And then it kind of all just worked all together with the idea of how we brought Kevin in, where, I was lost in Brazil and I found Kevin in the jungle. Yeah. So it worked almost even better with all of that.
And, I mean, here's the thing. I felt like such a casual complaining about them not having fights on the beach, but they made me think that. They made me excited.
They made everybody think that.
Yes. And I mean, I get it. I've heard the Yokozuna story about the USS Intrepid. I know his feet got burned and it sucked real bad, but it's 2020, 2021. They can't think of some way to do that safely. I felt screwed over in that. I felt like I wanted to be straight up Mortal Kombat style. I was willing to just...
Yeah, and that was how they sold it. I'm telling you, there is not a single idea behind that marketing department that didn't put that picture out on, I think it was Wednesday of the week of the fight, and didn't say, this is how we're going to sell this pay-per-view no matter what. Like, they were going to do a very good number of buys because of the Masvidal short notice replacement. They were going to do a good number of buys just based on the strength of the card. But, like, the amount of curiosity buys they got, I'm sure, on ESPN Plus, just for, is this really happening on an island? Are they really doing this on the beach? And then for it to be like, was definitely a high number.
And I mean, so maybe they couldn't have done it on a beach, but I mean, I have covered many outdoor fights before. Like, it happens. They've done it plenty. I mean, and to admittedly varying results. Sometimes it rains, but I don't think they were going to have that issue there. So I'm very excited.
When you have millions of dollars of infrastructure in the entire Dubai government like helping out, I think they could have figured something out.
Yes. Well, I'm very excited for MLW's Filthy Island, Wednesday, February 17th. Guys, it is on platforms everywhere. Dom Garrini, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. Hopefully we get to do this in person because we didn't in Cleveland. I didn't know you were going to be there. We didn't get to at WrestleMania at the show that for some reason somebody named after me. We didn't get to at any other point during the year. So hopefully the next time we're doing this in person.
Awesome. I hope so too, Sean. Really excited. Really happy to come on today and talk to you.
Guys, until next time, we're out.